This is my interview with Omar, who was successful in his application for a Canadian startup visa. This is the second interview in this series with successful startup visa applicants. So if you'd like to see the rest, check out the playlist below.
If you want to apply in general to incubators, the advice is more so than preparing yourself individually is prepare your business. We didn't know about this process before applying, so we were applying, and we didn't only apply to one incubator, we applied to all of them that we knew were designated entities. And before that, we got our business plan ready. We got our business ready. We tried to get some traction. We tried to start a business even if we knew we wouldn't get the start of business in the first place, because the end goal wasn't to start a business, but was to launch the business, right? So with that in mind, we had a more solid sort of application across the board, rather than just applying for, hey, I just want to get the visa. I had to make projections. I had to prepare, all the basics of a business plan had to be there when I applied.
Yeah. What did your business plan cover? What areas?
So it covered the problem that we were trying to solve, the sort of the market and the gap. It covered financial projections as to how much money we thought we were gonna achieve. It covered who were the people in the team, which sort of business requirements are not business requirements, but what was the internal organization in our team and who was gonna solve what specifically. It covered sort of roadmap in terms of our product, how we were going to get there, and how the roadmap met our projections. And essentially, it also covered a brief explanation of what the market was like and how we're going to inject ourselves into the market. Also, it included SWOT analysis, a SWOT analysis on our business, a brief SWOT analysis on our competitors as well, to showcase how is it that we were superior and in which ways. And it also covered brief market competitive analysis as to what other players in our field were there, and why how we would differentiate from them. I would say those are like the basics of what your business plan should cover.
Would you be able to talk through the sort of skill set that you were able to demonstrate on your CV?
Yeah, so I'm an electrical engineer. I graduated. I'm from Mexico City, so I studied there. But I also took a master's in international business from Holt International Business School, and the master's in strategic management for Erasmus University. Although I must stress that you don't need graduate degrees for you to start a business, and its credentials are important for certain situations. Like, hey, if you're, for example, selling a very specialized equipment in the medical sciences, they would like to know if you have a medical specialist in your team. But that doesn't mean that you yourself need to have that skill in your CV. Now, I am an electrical engineer, and since I applied to a technical path, I had to show expertise in that area. So I have a personal blog where I publish tutorials on how to do image 3D reconstruction in Python. So they read those posts. I've also talked about my experiences trying to replicate academic papers that were in this space, because it's very new. So there's very few tutorials out there. Today, there are more than there were a couple of years ago, but back then there weren't as many. So I talked about my experience there, and they saw more so than looking at, I don't have a PhD or a master's in artificial intelligence or computer science for that matter, but that didn't really matter. They were like, okay, this guy is driven enough for him to figure out the problem. And that's what most VCs, incubators, and angel investors want to see, right? It's different than applying to a regular job where they want to see hard credentials. In here, they just want to see results, however you get them. I've worked with guys that were PhDs at the incubator in artificial intelligence, and I also worked with guys who were just business people who just transitioned into coding and learn how to code themselves. So it's very varied. But I am an electrical engineer by trade, and I do software engineering professionally. So that's generally my skill set. Because of my experiences in my previous in business school, I had contacts in Canada. I had friends there, so I flew there and I told one of my friends, "Hey, I wanna live here." And he introduced me to the people who then became my business partners. He essentially said, "Hey, I know these two guys. They are trying to uh, start this kind of business." He put me in touch with them. We talked, and yeah, we started the business that way.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. And how many business partners did you have?
Two.
Two. Yeah. Good. What were they doing, and what was their skill set?
One of them was so the CEO, the guy who started the company. He used to work a solar company. I can't remember the name of the solar company he was working at. And the other business partner, she was marketing. She was a marketing expert. She was in charge of bringing the leads for the solar sales leads, and they were sort of the sales expertise and marketing expertise. And then I became sort of the engineering expertise, and we pulled off our strengths each individually to come up with the product.
Great. So you had the sales function, you had the market expert function, if you like, and then you had your skill set with software engineering and hardware. Yeah. And how did you come together with them? Was it with an eye to apply for the visa, or was it primarily for business and commercial reasons?
So they knew that I wanted to go to Canada, and they said, we can employ you here. We will try to employ you here. We're a very early business, so let's try to find a way. But by the time I met them, I knew about the startup visa, and they said, "Hey, this is a possibility. If we're gonna start a business, let's try to do this way anyway, because it sounds to me that it's the least painful way to do it ourselves than if we go through the sort of formal, get business, a sort of work visa, etc." Right? So they agreed to it, and they agreed to it, and they said, "Okay, if we're gonna start a business, for the time being, you just work from Mexico, and let's see how things go." We took it day by day until I was able to come here.
Great. So they were both nationals of Canada.
Yes.
And you were based in Mexico?
Yeah. So I came back from the Netherlands. I went briefly to Canada just to meet them. Then I went back to Mexico, and we were just working remotely until I had the chance to go and apply to the incubator, and then stay back.
How far did you take that, and what did it involve to actually build the minimum viable product or service?
Right. So since we started, my business partners were already selling solar and having an actual accounts receivable instead before we even were thinking of applying to an incubator. So they already had a business going. To reach a minimum viable product in terms of the AI that would do reconstruction, that happened way after we applied to the incubator, and they were aware of it. They were aware that it wasn't going to be a quick thing, but we sort of try to show them some basics of like, hey, if we have this very difficult part in place with this fake data that we just built to resemble that, we can get to this place, right? To show a prototype. So to answer your question in a more succinct way, I believe, is that we put a lot of effort, my business partners especially, because it was all them at the beginning, into showing that they had a viable business regardless, right? Like, hey, we're selling solar. We have this idea which will make things better, but we have a business anyway. And I think in regards to your question, if you apply to any incubator, angel investor, whatever, anywhere in the world with a viable business in a way that is like, hey, I'm going to be successful regardless of our encounter between us, that gives you a higher chance of actually getting accepted than I need you necessarily to succeed, right? Because they don't like that. They want to know that you will succeed regardless of whether they give you their money or their incubation process or not.
How long did it take from you submitting your application and business plan to when you received the letter of support?
It was since we sent the business plan, we applied. So for the moment we applied to the moment I got the letter of support, it was like 3 months.
Yeah. Was there an interview process?
Yes.
What did that involve?
Like questions about the technology, questions about the business plan, questions about our business hypotheses or assumptions. They would try to challenge it. They would try to see how novel the idea was, how defensible it was, both from a business perspective and from a technology perspective. So they had the academic head who he's working at Google Brain right now. So he's an expert. He's a professor at, I can't remember if he still is. And I think he is. But anyway, point is that he was the one um, reading and listening about technology, the technical aspects of our solution, and then sort of deciding if it was worth the acceptance, essentially. And he would say, okay, this is a problem, especially trying to figure out if the problem required AI, because right now everybody wants to apply AI to everything, and it might not necessarily require it. And he was there to say, okay, this could be solved with a random regular algorithm, or no, you do require deep learning or machine learning to do this, right? That was his role there, sort of filter out true AI problems.
Yeah. And how did you prove that this was a real application of deep learning and AI?
Yeah, because I essentially found the paper that would state that. In my opinion, when you want to justify something that requires technology, the best way is to go for peer-reviewed journals and find something that says it. But other than that, you just have to point out why is it that you cannot write linear logic to a problem. The thing about AI is that the whole point is for you to solve a problem that you cannot do with sort of like regular imperative coding, right? Like if this, then that. Um, so the problem that is like, hey, we have a bunch of houses that we want to segment and make 3D reconstruction out of them, but no single house looks the same, even from neighbor to neighbor, and even the orientation and all that stuff. So there's no way you can write an algorithm that will just do that segmentation on its own. You need deep learning for that. And there's all these papers that say that, yeah, urban 3D reconstruction is not it's not a solved problem to this day. And deep learning could be a nice approach to this. And he agreed. So that's how we got in.
Got it. So it was about 3 months between submitting the business plan and the application and receiving the letter of support.
Yeah.
How long did it take roughly from receiving the letter of support to when you were actually able to submit the visa?
Oh, so that was done very, very quickly. So as soon as they say yes, they're like, we're going to start the process for you to come here as soon as possible. Yeah, it took like, they told us yes, early January. By mid-February, I was already sending my papers to apply for the startup.
Great. And could you talk about what those papers were and how you fulfilled the requirements for the visa?
Yeah, so the paper requirements are the same as what they're in the website. They just have to show the acceptance letter. It's an official format that designated entity has to fill. I can't remember the name of the form, but it's there online. They have to sign that. They have to fill that for you, sign that. Then you also have to give information about your business. I can't remember if it has to be incorporated or not. I don't think so, but you have to give information about who are the people involved, what's the stake ownership, and all that stuff. There's some requirements about ownership that you have to fulfill. I can't remember, to be honest, what were those requirements, but you have to fulfill them. Then you have to indicate through your CV and through a letter why is it that you're indispensable for the business. Like, how is it that why can none of your business partners do what you're doing, essentially, right? Then you have to explain why is it to get because they wanted me to come to Canada as quickly as possible. We also applied for a work permit at the same time, which you're allowed to. Like if you're eligible for the startup visa and you start your application process, you can apply for a work permit so that you can come to Canada and work while your startup visa is in place. then so we did that, and then we had to justify why is it that I needed to be there that quickly? Why couldn't I just wait in Mexico? And then that was it. We just okay. So there's another piece of information that is required, which is the police report, which is a background, a sort of a background check from all the countries where you live for more than 6 months, that you haven't committed any felonies. And that changes per country. So I was in an interesting situation because I've lived in the US, in the Netherlands, and in Mexico. So I had to get 3 different police reports, and each of them had different requirements, which meant that for the US one, I had to get it on my own. And they tell you like, yeah, if you can apply, if you can send us your police report from the US before you even apply, or while you're applying, that's great. But then the Mexican one required the Canadian Immigration Services to contact the Mexican embassy directly, and they would do that on their own. And the Dutch one required the Canadian Immigration Services to send me a letter saying that they need one so that they can apply for one myself. And those 3 stages happen at different points in time. So the first initial set of papers, I think I sent the one from the FBI, the US one. The other ones, they just came through as the stages progressed. And the Dutch one, I remember it was the last one for me to leave it.
Got it. Yeah. And how long was it until your visa was granted then, before the startup visa was granted after you applying?
Right. So what the startup visa itself, I believe it's granted almost right away. So the startup visa, it just says you have a visa here to start a startup. What takes a long time is the permanent residency. The thing about Canada's startup visa is that you get permanent residency right away. You become eligible to it automatically. And that's what takes a long time. So to give you an idea, I started here, I applied for the startup visa, and then I applied for a work permit associated to my startup visa to come here and work. That took like, we applied, so I remember we sent the papers on like a weekend. A week later, I was taking a plane to Canada, and then I applied here at the port of entry for a work permit, and it took like 15 minutes. Also, it was super empty that day, but it took like 15 minutes for them to say, okay, you have a startup visa, you need a work permit, fine, get it, here you go. And then the permanent residency process took 8 months, which is fast because I'm single and I didn't have to, the background checks were the only thing that would take a lot of time, but it normally takes like a year.
What advice would you have for someone who is looking to apply for the Canada Startup Visa?
Yes. One, Toronto is the AI hotspot of the world. So if you have an AI-based technology, even if it's not ready, even if it's not entirely consummated, it's a good idea to try to come here because there's a lot of support here for that kind of technology. Also, blockchain, pretty big here too. So anything related in those areas, you'll find a lot of people willing to work and support you for that. The other is make sure that you fulfill all the requirements for the startup visa if that's the route that you want to go. Network a lot and early. If things will always take time, it will be a slow process. So plan for that and make the end goal your business, not the chance to move to Canada. Because if you do it the other way around, there's a less chance for either of those things working than if you do it business first and then moving, right? And yeah, that would be sort of the basic advice.
It would be interesting to find out about what is considered innovative and to what extent innovation has to be applied to a business to qualify for a startup visa.
Right. It's a bit of a tricky question to answer because I guess it would depend on the type of field that you're trying to apply AI. So to give you a sense, if you come today and you tell me, oh, I made this new neural network that adds filters to your face, that's not innovative anymore. There's a ton of apps that do that. There's a lot of tutorials that do that. There's even source code out there that will do it for you. If you come and say a chatbot, then it would depend on the industry in which you apply it. Chatbot for insurance, that already exists. Chatbot for even immigration, that already exists, right? Chatbot for whatever might exist, right? So I guess it would depend. Now, if you say I'm going to apply a neural network to segment cells in these weird rare disease that nobody else has decided to apply this to, then that might be an innovation, even though that technology already exists. I don't know if I'm making sense, but my point is, try to apply AI in a place where it hasn't been applied before. Luckily, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit because not all markets and fields of knowledge have applied AI to whatever it is that whatever problems they're having, because it's still too specialized, but that will run out very quickly. AI is evolving and it's becoming more and more popular each day. So more people will start taking those low-hanging fruits. But that's what innovation entails. I guess the short answer is depends on the market and the person on the field where you're applying your solution.
I hope you found that interview helpful and interesting. If you'd like to check out the other interviews in this series with successful startup visa applicants, check out my playlist just below.